What? You guys are still using websites to display your blog? Well, you no longer have to, because in this episode, we're going to build a blog app from start to finished publishable app files using these 3 no-code tools. Okay, so before we start into the video, I just wanted to show you the product that we're going to create. We have our blog list here with 3 sample blog posts. You can add them easily in the Airtable. We have a search where you can search for the blog posts that have your keyword here. We have a side menu with categories and an About Me section. So when we click on the About Me section, a static content is loaded. When we click on categories, we can categorize our blog posts, and these can also be simply added into Airtable. So for example, if we're using the category hunting, we only get the blog posts associated with hunting. When we click on a blog post, we see the image of the blog post displayed again and all the content from Airtable. Let's start with the points we're going through in this episode. First of all, we're going to create a wireframe just to define the structure of the app. Then we're going to build the backend in Airtable, where all of our posts, for example, will be stored. Next up, we're going to design the whole app in Figma. We can then connect our design to Airtable using Bravo Studio. And lastly, we're going to test our publishable app. Enough with the structure, let's get started. We're here in Figma where I created a new document, and we're just going to start building the wireframe. I'm going to speed up that process and explain what I'm doing along the way. We're going to start off by creating our home screen where all the blog posts will be displayed. We're going to drag a top bar in here and then create the blog listings. So we're having an image and then the title of each blog post, and they will replicate as a list. Then we're going to add a menu icon there so we can trigger our menu from every screen, and this menu will be a side menu. So I'm just going to design the part that will be visible. We're having a logo at the top and then some menu points there. Now the next screen is the actual blog post. So if we click on any of the list items in our home screen, we're going to get the blog post. This blog post consists of the image from the blog list and then the name, which is also in the blog list, but then a subheading and a text. Next up, I'm going to import a search icon from Iconify. This is a Figma plugin which you can just add over the store there, and this is going to represent our search bar that we have in the list page. Now to the category screen, this will just be a list of the categories. I'm going to add an image so the categories look more appealing. The last screen will be the About Me screen, where we can add some static content right inside of Figma. Okay, so we're now in Airtable. After creating our structure, we know what features we want to have. So now we understand the data that needs to go into our backend. So we're going to create a new base. I'm going to start from scratch, call that blog app, and just select a random color. I've already used that. Let's use this one, and our blog will be this. Okay. So now we're going to select this blog app, delete all of our fields that we already have here. We're going to start by naming this table posts. You could also add more tables for features that you know from other softwares like WordPress. So you could add, for example, an author or custom post type, but we're just going to, for the sake of this tutorial, concentrate on the posts. So first of all, we're going to have the name of the post that already fits here. This is a single line of text because we don't want the name to be too long. Then we're going to add another field. So the second thing that we'll add will be a subheading, just so the name will be the heading, and then we can have a little subheading, which we're going to make a long text, just so we have another option to make this blog post appealing to the user. We're then going to add the actual text of the post. This will be a long text, and we're going to enable rich text formatting. This means, like you can see here, we could use something like a checklist or headers and code blocks, which could be useful if you are writing more advanced blog posts. Hit save and go on to the next field. This will be the category. As we've already seen, I want to add categories so the user can search or filter by this category, and we're going to define the options for the categories right here. So I decided to make this example app about the blog for a monster hunter, and we're just going to come up with a couple of categories here. So let's say we have dragons, we have exploring, hunting, maybe, and maybe let's go with defense as well. That should be enough categories for this example. So what this multiple select does is we can click on here and see all the options we have for categories. This makes it way more convenient. Next up, we want to have an image for every blog post, and this will be an attachment. So we can just click here and drop the files, or click on here and then we can select them from our device. The last thing we're going to add is the date. Maybe we could add some filtering later. Select date here, and we're going to use this. We don't need a time field because in most blogs it's not necessary to know at which exact time the blog post was published. The date is enough for us, and we're going to hit save. This date option is just so we can either sort by latest or oldest, but this could also be interesting to put into the blog detail page where the post is shown, so the user can understand how old this post is. Yes, and this is our backend now. I'm just going to add like maybe 3 or 4 example posts. By the way, we're using Airtable here because it really integrates well with Bravo Studio, but you can use anything else. I already tried Strapi or WordPress. You could use any headless CMS. Okay, so now that we're finished with our backend, we have some example posts here. We're just going to complete the whole design in Figma. I'm back here in Figma where we created our wireframe. Just so this isn't interfering with the design we're going to create now, I'm going to put the skip tag in every top level frame, so everywhere here. And this will make Bravo skip these frames, so we can do whatever we want in there, but it won't affect the app. Alright, so now let's create the real app. We're going to do the same like with the wireframe. We're going to select the iPhone 11 Pro Max here. You could use any screen. I just like to use this one because it's big, so it's easier for me to create the design and see how it will look on smaller screens. But you could use anything you want there. We're going to start with the home screen and then go through all of our screens here until we have the complete app finished. So the home screen will have, like all the others, will like all the others, this is supposed to have a top bar. So what we're going to do is we create this rectangle, then we draw a frame around this, and this frame will be called our top bar, and we'll have the container top bar tag. To get more information about the top bar tag, I have a video on that, but just for your understanding, this works like everything in this container will be an overlay over the rest of the app, and even when we're scrolling, this will be on top. The reason we're doing this is so we can always access the menu through an icon. I'm going to import that icon using the Iconify plugin. We're going to just use a hamburger icon here, and I'm going to drag that right in here. We don't need this frame around, so we're just going to delete that. Drag the menu bar, drag the menu icon right here. Alright, that should be a little too big. Okay, so I haven't decided on a color scheme yet, but I think since this is a Monster Hunter, we're going to go a little darker, maybe a little greenish. Just to have like this dark atmosphere. On the other hand, this needs to be white then, or like a little lower opacity. Okay, so what we want to do is when the user presses this button, we want the menu to open. To make creating the menu easier for me, I'm just going to head over to the file I created for my menu tutorial, and we're just going to copy paste that and then adjust the design so it fits our needs. You can always do that, it's way easier, and most of the time you get less errors. Okay, so I'm here in my community file. You can just click here, duplicate, and draft. You'll have it duplicated to your. When you click view, you see it in your browser, and we want to have the side menu, and I'm just going to use Control-C to copy that. Back in our blog app, just going to press Control-V again, and I'm going to have this menu here. So we can kind of create this menu here. We already have the menu side tag, which is really important, so this menu works. Instead of a logo, we're just going to write monster blog here. Alright, so let's change the color of this to the color we chose for our top bar, and the same thing with the color of the actual frame. The reason we're doing that is so it looks cleaner in smaller displays. For a full example, just visit the video about the menu tags. Okay, so we're going to have the home here. I'm just going to leave it like that. We could change the icon or anything. We can add things, but I'm not going to do request here. But instead we're going to have categories and yes, about me. These are the types we have here. So home would be our blog list, the about me section is this one here, and the categories will be linked here. About me, this icon fits, but I need another one for the categories, so I'm going to use the Iconify again. Maybe use this one. Okay, the other icons look weird now, but okay, we're going to delete this frame again and then delete our icon. This will be a little bigger. Press Control. You can press Control while dragging to preserve this ratio here, and we're going to select the color. They don't fit perfectly, as you can see, maybe like this. No, it's also not perfect. but that should do it for this tutorial. Alright, so let's make the menu working. If you're using the side menu tag, that means if the user does a swipe motion like this, the menu will appear, but we also want to let the menu appear when the user clicks on this hamburger icon. So we're going to use the prototyping tool, click and drag this little arrow to the menu screen. And this also creates this blue play icon here. This just means we're going to start on the home screen. Don't use the play icon here in the side menu. We wanted to have the icon on the home screen because this is the first screen the user will see. We're not going to test this out yet, but we're going to continue designing a little more before taking a look at the prototype. Now the next step will be to create this replicating block list, this replicating post list, so all of our posts will be displayed in this one giant list. To do that, we need a container that replicates itself. So we're going to use the frame again, drag it as big as we want it, and then name this like this, post, and this is a container. The reason we're using the container tag here is so Bravo knows to replicate this whole frame. Be careful that this is actually matching here, because we don't want any overlapping here. This whole frame will be taken by Bravo, and when there are multiple posts in our API request, they will be put beneath here. So we could see this would be the second post, and then there would be a third post. But we don't need to create all of the posts here. We just need one design for the posts, and this will be enough. Okay, so our post container. Let's fill that with a design. You could also create the design first and then draw the container around that design. But we're going to go with a big rectangle where the name of the post will be displayed. The name should be enough, but we also want to display an image. To do that, just drag the one from that I downloaded earlier, and I'm just going to place that here. Let's see, make it like this big. Alright, and center it. Okay, so I just decided to make the background darker as well, maybe a little darker even, and then make these look like they're frames from an old camera, because I think that's a really great idea. We're just gonna do it like that. Okay, maybe if we're going with this whole image, with this whole print style, we're going to maybe change the font to something that looks a little like it's hand drawn. This looks really good. I mean, it's not the perfect thing, but this will be enough for us. So another thing we'll do right here is use the flexo tag. Okay, so if we have a longer name, we're just going to drag that out here and also make it bigger. I'm just going to center that so it always looks clean and nice. And then, alright, this should fit. And we can see if we test something a little longer, it still looks good until like this length, which should be perfectly fine. And alright, this will be our container that replicates. This is maybe a little too we still want it somewhat clean. Okay, but now we've created our container that should replicate. Now we need to go back to our container tag, which somehow ended up here, but we're just going to put it here and now put it over the whole design here. These will be these need to be inside the frame, so make sure this is also working. Yeah, we already checked that there's nothing overlapping here. When creating this container frame, you need to think of the padding. So for example, when we get the second post, it will look like this. So we need to decide, is this padding enough? In our case, I would say this fits perfectly, but just make sure that this space here and the space here will be duplicated as well. So make sure they're not too big or too small. Alright. Okay, so we're going to have a look at our wireframe here. We just created these replicating post containers. I just realized we also need the search bar here. So we're going to create a rectangle here. This will be our search input field. And we're going to give this rounded corners. We're also going to duplicate that from our top bar example. I'm a little lazy today. So we're here in the top bar. You can just duplicate that as you like. We're just going to take this search field here, take the vector into it. I'm just going to put that in here as well. So we're just going to Control C and then go with the blog app, and we can delete this thing here and just insert the search bar. This is a little too big. Back to our file. Nope. Make sure to press Shift here so the icon isn't screwed up. And yeah, we're going to change the color of that as well. I'm going to take this one and then make it a little, no, that looks not right. We're going to take it like this and then change the color of the search and the search icon to this one. You know what? I'm going to go with this color, even darker. Alright, so now that we have our search complete here, let's see what we just copied. The interesting thing is this text component, which has the component input text, which takes this whole container. Make sure that it's not small like this, that it will cut your text, but make sure that it is the same size that you want your input field. We can even go up to here and give a little bit more space here. And then the action filter tag. This allows us to, whatever is typed in this field will go through all of the posts here in this list. So Bravo knows which posts are in this list, and then looks for the letter or the letters that we wrote in here and just filters the list by that. Alright, now that we have our search working, our home screen is complete. We're going to have a quick look at that in Bravo Vision. To use our design in Bravo Vision, we can just copy the URL of our Figma file here and insert it into the Bravo import field. So in Bravo Studio, just select import in the right corner of your projects file and then import your Figma file. You can leave this one in, but it isn't necessary to have anything selected there. Click on import and we'll see that our file is now available as project. The two screens that we had, as you can notice, we don't have the screens that have the skip tag here, so our wireframe is not imported as well. Alright, now that we have that in Bravo Studio, let's have a look at how this looks in Bravo Vision. In Bravo Vision, just select your project and you can see that we have our project here. Let's test out the menu. We click on this and see that our menu is popping up. Don't mind this little shadow here. This is just from the emulator I'm using. Okay, so we can see that also this motion works. We can just drag the menu out from the side, but we see that we do not have a replicating list here. This works, but of course it's not filtering anything because there's nothing in there yet. We're going to take a look at how to connect our blog app to the actual blog posts in a bit, but let's continue designing in Figma. Let's have another look at the wireframe. We have the menu, screen checked, home screen checked. Next thing is the actual blog post. To do that, we're just going to copy and paste, Control-C, Control-V again, just so we start with the same design. We're going to delete this container here. We're also going to delete our search bar, but we're going to keep this top bar here because we'll need the menu in every screen here. Okay, let's rename this to blog post and change the background color so it's easier to read on here. Like we've seen here in our wireframe, we want to have an image. We're going to take the image here, Control-C, Control-V, and put it in here. This will be always replaced with the image that is also in the post list. Next up, we have the heading and the subheading. I'm just going to copy and paste that one here, although I don't quite like this font for our actual text. We're going to use Mooly here, like in the menu. Make this a whole lot bigger, not that big, like maybe this. Yes, and also we need to take care of the size of that box. We are going to name that heading and use the flexo tag here and then put it like this. The flexo tag means that if the heading is longer than it fits here, it's just going to expand downwards. But to get more information on the flexo tag, I'm planning on doing a video on that as well. Alright, so then we created a subheading, like you remember from the Airtable. I need to make this bigger, I'm sorry. We're going with 30 here. And then Control-C, Control-V again, For the subheading, this will be smaller, of course. We're going with 24, and this is also flexo, and because of the same reasons. Subheading, and now we need the actual text, so the blog post will go here. Flexo as well, and this will expand downwards. Alright, so now back to, no, that doesn't look too good. We also need some hierarchy here in those texts. Make this extra bold, yes. Alright, and put this like here, this with a little extra space. Alright, now a really important part in Bravo is always the container. So we're going to have this container for our image. The image will go in there. Then we have a second container. Oh, be careful here. These should go up there. Yeah, no overlapping, but also no space in between. Alright, so the next container will go here. You can already see this is overlapping. Let's go like this. Yeah, should work fine. We always need to have this as the last thing in the flexo tag. Expand that downwards. Alright, sometimes it just needs a little tweaking around. Next thing with the subheading, we're going to create our container again. Make sure it fits everywhere. Alright, then this will go into the container again. And our last container for the actual text. Here we need to calculate some padding. And something with the frame is wrong again. Okay, so the frame is always a little over the top here. This should look fine. We're having the subheading here. Always name your frames so you don't get confused. So now we want to move that up here, and that should look fine. This is our actual text. We could test that with some longer lorem ipsum test. So now we're using the prototyping tool to connect this whole frame to our blog post. This means that every time somebody clicks on this post listing, it directs to the blog post, so the blog detail page. This is already connected because we copied that from there, and that finishes up our blog post. Next, we're going to have a look at the wireframe again. So we have our image here, we have the heading and the subheading, and we have our text, which should expand downwards. So we're ready to go to the categories. To do that, I'm going to make it easy for myself and just duplicate the home, because we need the same top bar even with the search. And I'm just going to do these categories like in this style again, so like these photos, but this time we're going to have them a little smaller with this spooky image here and our name. Right, so just going to center that, give it a little space here, so we can fix that for the home later, but I'm just going to concentrate on that for now. We need 4 of these. I'm going to duplicate that again. Nope. The post container, we don't need that anymore, but we can just select all of them by pressing Shift and grouping them, Control G. Let's call that container group, and we're going to Control C, Control V this group to get the list of the containers. Oh, no. Like that. Make sure they have the same space. Where are you? No. Probably here. Yes. Okay, they have the same space. So now we have dragons, hunting, defense, and exploring. I think I'm going to test out with a little bigger. Yes, okay. Would have been better to first test and then duplicate, but this is pretty easy to even do now. So now we have our categories. We had to duplicate them because they are not fetched from the API, so we can't use the same mechanism as here in the home screen. Make sure to call that categories. And now, since this is static content, we also need to change the images. I have prepared some more spooky stock footages here. So dragons, we can just take that one again. For hunting, let's choose this one with this owl. Defense would be here, and exploring would be these misty mountains. All right, so now we have our categories ready. Having a look at the wireframe again, this looks good. Last thing we have left is the About Me section, so this will be a copy of the blog posts. Do we have an image of our monster guy here? Okay, let's just choose this. And because this will be static content, so this is like if we wrote our blog posts right into Figma here. This is just to show you how to organize some static data. And we're going to write like, I don't know, about me. How did I call him? The monster blog. Okay, so let's write about me, the monster expert. I like finding and killing monsters. Oh, okay. These are both the same font size, so I'm going to make that one a little smaller. Just for text hierarchy, the same thing for this one, because we don't want the users to be confused. I like finding and killing monsters. really straightforward. So now let's rename this one into the About Me screen. Let's connect all of these screens using the prototyping tool, because we copied a lot here. We already have all the links from our hamburger menu icon to the actual menu. Now we have the link between the list item and its detail page. I will link the categories to a duplicate of the home screen. The reason for that being is that we need a different Airtable request for our categories. We're going to have a look at that when we're in Bravo Studio. But for now, you just need to know that we'll duplicate this as soon as I fixed this little heading error here and the spacing. We also need the links inside the blog. Now that we have all of these, now that we have all of them done, let's take this vector into the, I think it was request. Yes, we can rename that into categories. That's just because we copied that from a different file. Alright, so take the categories, make sure it has selected the complete group. Same thing with home being connected to the home screen, and About Me being connected to About Me. So now we see that every screen is connected, every screen can be reached from the menu. And now it's time to test that again in Bravo Vision. For that, first of all, we're going to update it here in Bravo Studio. You can see we don't have these new files, these new screens from the new file. Now they're all imported. And now let's also refresh. So tap and hold, update with Bravo, and this should load our new app. So we can open our menu, click on categories, and see that this looks like crap. Okay, so it's actually amazing that this happened, because now I can show how to solve this error. The reason for that is that we didn't put a container around our element. In Bravo, always use containers. This is like the flex boxes in web design. We need these containers to exactly know how the app should display all our elements. You can see that we have spacing here, but not here. That's a clear sign of missing a container. A lot of the time there will be a notification here, but this time Bravo missed it. They sometimes put a container on there automatically, but here in this case we need to do that ourselves. But before we do that, let's have a look at the About Me section, and you can see this works perfectly. Alright, so now we have two things to do. We're going back to our Figma file. We need a container around all of this. Make sure it's not overlapping again. Alright, and this little padding should be fine. Also, we need to check with this. Drag it down a little and then expand. Press Ctrl and you can just resize that container. And also we're going to change the size here to a little bit bigger, like outside there, because our names will be smaller. We should be ready to go and duplicate this home. So we're going to place that down here and call it categories request, because this is just the list of the posts, but this time not with the usual request in home where we have sorted everything by the publish date, but instead now we're also using a filter that filters by the category that we want. So before we go into Bravo Studio, there are a few things I'd like to clean up, and the first one would be to take our detail page and to duplicate that as well, because this will be the blog post for our categories. So we will need a lot of category requests. So for every category we need a category request screen, but we will only need one category's blog post. The reason for that is that we are going to use an ID later on in Bravo Studio, which will link these category request screens to this one blog post for categories screen. So the second thing I'd like to do here is just a quick thing for the design is I want to take this font here and put it on our logo. Just the longer I look at it, the more it looks like it's supposed to be like this. And next up, we're going to add, in preparation for our linking with Bravo Studio, we're going to take all the elements that will be linked, put this little star in front of them, and let's say this is the post title. Okay, so next thing that will be linked, this one as well, the post title, and this one will be dynamic. So heading will get the star as well, subheading, and our text. Okay, so I'm just going to delete that again, copy and paste with our little stars. Alright, and then add the categories. Again, About Me is a static page, so we won't be replacing any of this text, so we don't need this star. Alright, next thing would be to add some app assets. To do that are not these assets. We are looking for assets like the splash screen, our loading screen, and the app icon. Those will be displayed in Bravo Studio later and will also be exported to our publishable app files. So I always like to do them on a separate page. So I'm just going to call that assets. And for that, I'm going to copy the assets from my plant app. The full guide to the plant app you can find in my first video. I'll also link that in the description below. Okay, so loading our plant app. These are the assets. So I'm just going to drag over there and copy the whole thing. Go back to our blog app file. Okay, in our blog app file, select the assets page again and paste them. So we don't need any of these, of the logo here. We're just going to replace that with our logo monster block here. So copy and paste. Most of the time it's better to not have text in your app. I think Apple is not a great fan of logos with text, but it will be fine for our sample here. So if you have a real brand, use that logo, of course. So the monster block will be visible here as well. Okay, so we need our color. Just copy and paste that as well. Alright, not beautiful, but works for our case. So the app icon here will be shown in your home screen. So when you're just like next to all the other apps that you have on your phone, this loading screen is the screen that is shown every time a user switches from screen to screen, and our splash screen is the screen that's shown on the first load. So when the user opens the app, he sees this splash screen, and then every other loading will be this screen here. Just going to rename that page to design, so we have the app and the assets. Before importing to Bravo, another thing that I'd like to do before importing into Bravo is add some transitions. So we can just add transitions here in our top level frame. A full video on transitions is also available on my channel. The basics are just type in transition, then you have some animation types, like we're going to use push here, and then the direction where this should go. So I'm going to go with it pushes in the right direction or the left direction. Up or down would be possible as well, but I'm just going to go with right here. Okay, so the easiest thing would be just to copy that one and add it to every screen here. We can't use that on the menu screen because this already has the animation of moving in there. So we're going to skip that, but we can use it in every other screen. I don't know if these all fit now with the direction right, but we're going to see that pretty quickly once we test the app in Bravo Vision. So now we can head over to Bravo Studio. Here we want to refresh that one again, and now go to the data library to connect our Airtable with Bravo Studio. So we're going to create a new collection. Choose Airtable here. We could do the same thing with custom API, but the Airtable wizard will make it easier for us. We just enter the URL. To get the URL like shown in this little video in Bravo Studio, just click here on Share, select Base, and now we are creating a share link. We'll copy and paste that into Bravo Studio. Paste it, Control V, and continue. Now, like shown in this video again, we're going to get the API key. Click on here your account, then go to account, and you'll see your API key here. Select it and copy paste it into Bravo Studio. Now we're complete. They're running some tests, and now we're here inside of our blog app. But also, let's have a look at the advanced view. These are the two requests we have. So we have our detail request. This is for the actual post, and this list request is for our home screen. What we want to do now is add requests where we filter for every category. To build this request for our category, we are actually going to use this Airtable API encoder, which can be found on CodePen. The link will be in the description. So first of all, we need the base ID. This is in the API page. So we're going back to our Airtable, where we're going to select help and then API documentation. In the API documentation, click on authentication, and then you'll see your ID here. It starts with app, so just copy and paste that into the CodePen. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is the table name. Our table is called posts. And now we're using a filter by formula. When you click on formula, you'll find this Airtable article where a lot of operators are explained if you need something special, but we're going to look for the search right here. So we can just copy and paste that again, paste it into a filter by formula, and now the string we need to find, we're going to start with dragon, and where to search is in category, and we don't want a starting position. We want to search everything. So now we have our request here. You can define some more things. You can sort like by date, for example, if we also want the date to be the first, and then just copy and paste this URL. Let's create our third request. Just press on that blue plus icon here. We're going to paste the URL we got from the CodePen here. Make sure that all of the symbols here are correct, because sometimes the CodePen messes that up a little. So we're looking for a category and then the value dragon. So we're just going to name that dragon request. So this is all of our dragon posts will be displayed here. We can just copy all of our details from the authorization here. So we have the same authorization. Now we're going to select the data we want to use. So the Airtable wizard here already selected those for us here. So basically we're going to do the same as the list here. So let's hit send to get that list. We're going to select all because this will be a list and not only one single. Then we're going to need the ID. The ID will be used to open the particular post, but we're going to get to that request a little later. So we also want to display the subheading. No, we don't need the subheading yet. We just need the name and the image, because that is the thing, like we've seen here, that is the thing that's displayed here in the list. So select the name. This is the name of our post, and then an URL for the image. So you can see we have a couple of sizes for the image. I'm just going to use large. That should be fine here. Alright, so now we're going to go to selected data, and now using this ID we're going to rename that with ID. That is a label we're going to use in our fourth request. Now we're going to copy this sample content here. We're going to use that in a bit, but first of all, let's duplicate this detail request. We're going to name that category detail. So this will be the request when someone clicks on a post in the dragon listing. We're going to get a different detail page here. As you have seen in our Figma file, we also have a different category blog post here. This will have the second request with the ID from our dragon listing. Okay, so we're going to replace this ID with the one in small cap letters, like seen here. We could also name this like CID for category ID. Just so you see, this is a different ID. We already copied these things when duplicating, and this should also have duplicated all the selected things here, like in the detail. So we have our image, we have our text, we have our heading and our subheading. Okay, so now we need to connect that to the actual app files we imported into Bravo Studio. Go to Projects, select your blog app. First of all, we're going to connect our main listing, so our home. I've already selected list here. So we're going to select the posts list. This is the one created by the Airtable wizard. And now we're going to open this. Here in the post, this is the frame that will be replicated for each blog post. So we're going to select records here to fetch all the records for a listing, and then we want to use the name here and the image. So we can just select any of the URLs here. I'm just going to select large. So this means every frame, every post frame will be replicated, and we insert the post title and the post image there. What's already done for us is when we click on one of these from the post list request, the ID gets fetched over to our detail request. Let's select the post detail here. We're going to select the URL of the image. We're going to set the name as heading. Okay. Refresh that, update with Bravo, and now this works. So we see our image here and the heading, the subheading, and our text. Let's take a look at the categories. When we're clicking here on Dragon, where we have our Dragon request, we see that our list is loaded, but we don't have the list filled yet. So let's do that first. We're going back to all screens of our blog app, and now we're going to select the listing for the categories. This is what we used just now, and now we're going to do the same thing with the categories request, but this time we're going to select the Dragon request instead of posts list. So here is the same thing. The post should have all records, and for each record, the name and the thumbnail. Okay, so now that we have that, we also need the actual blog post. So now we're going to select the blog app again, and this time use category detail. We're going to connect that again using the exact same principles. The heading is the name, the subheading is the subheading, and lastly our text. Now let's test that out. I'm going to refresh. This is now updated, and when we click on categories, dragons, we see all of our posts for the dragon. So we only have one dragon post here. That's fine, but the interesting thing is it working when we click on the detail page here? And it does work. Perfect. These steps, we only need one step for the category detail, because we can use the category ID request for every category, but we're going to need a different listing for each of these categories. So I'm going to duplicate that 3 times, each for hunting, defense, and exploring as well. So to do that, we're going back to Figma. I just realized that this should probably be left, the others too, but we're going to go to that later. First, let's duplicate that, and this will be our category request, but this time for hunting. I'm going to rename this one to Dragon. So now we have a defense category, and then lastly the exploring. Okay, so now we're going to head back over to Bravo Studio to connect all of them. In Bravo Studio, click on Update here. This is going to fetch all the new screens. Okay, so now we have the new things. Let's take a first look at our dragon request here. So all of these are still linked, but now we're going to have to do the same thing for exploring, defense, and hunting, because they of course have no bindings yet. For that, we're going to go back to our library here. We're going to go to the advanced mode because we're going to need all the advanced features here. So just duplicate the dragons request. This will be our exploring request now. Here we can just take the same URL, but instead of dragon, we're going to look for all the posts containing exploring. Duplicate that as well for our defense request. Same thing here. Defense, and then lastly the hunting request. Here we go. Okay, and quickly tap hunting here. Now let's go back to our project and bind the missing requests. Blog app, and we're here in exploring, so we're going to select this one, the post title, the post first, so select records here. Then we're going with the post title and the thumbnail. Same thing with defense request this time. Okay, so now that that is finished, let's refresh our whole app here. And then we're going to test every category if this works. So head over to categories. Dragons, we already tested that. Still works. Hunting does not work. Oh yeah, we forgot to link those, of course. So head back to Figma. They are already connected to our post, to our categories post page here. So we already select the detail for the categories request. But of course, we're going to need a linking from these two. Okay, so let's see where hunting is. This is hunting. Defense should be here. And then exploring is down here, because of course we want to get these lists depending on which button is clicked here. So now go back to Bravo, update our Figma file, and then update the same thing in Bravo Vision. Categories. The dragons work. Hunting works. Defense works as well, because we have two posts here, and exploring works too. Now we have all of our app finished. Of course, we could add more posts. These are still a little small. We could add more sub pages. We could add more categories. Let's test that out. Yeah, so I just realized that that was a dumb move, because the search bar only works with data from the API, so we could actually delete this search bar. The home should work. So if we're going to type, let's say, kill, then we only get the one with kill in it. I'm just going to delete that. Now you would also be able, if you have your app finished, tweak the design a little bit, you would be able to click here on publish, then first request the debug APK so you can try out the app in the actual setting. So Bravo Vision replicates what the app will look like, but here you could really get a file that can be installed and then even go through the whole publication process with your blog app. This has been a very long episode. We created a wireframe here. We went to Airtable to build our backend. We designed a whole app here in Figma and then connected everything to Bravo Studio. Thank you for sticking with me through all that time. I hope you learned something. As always, you can find the Figma file of this episode, so this whole app as well as the menu and everything we used in here, you can find that down below in the description. I'm really looking forward to see what apps you will be creating. Feel free to send them to me and I can give you some feedback. Please make sure to tweak the design a little bit and make it your own. If you want to get the most out of Bravo Studio, make sure to subscribe, since I'll be releasing new tips and guides regularly. And if you have any questions, visit the Bravo community on Spectrum or write a comment here. Thank you for watching and keep Bravorizing.